Nisha is here already.
Is she?
Yeah.
Ah,
Hey,
there she is.
How
How come I don't see her? Okay. Thanks for
we
letting
were
me
just
know.
about to search. Yeah, we were about to send a search warrant and say, where is Nisha? So, but now she's here. Excellent.
Okay, I'm going to start the webinar. Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Okay, welcome to the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting for Thursday, May 6th. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and let's do a roll call.
Commissioner Begor,
Yes.
Commissioner Tombe,
here.
Commissioner Kumarapan,
Here.
Vice Chair Shu,
Here.
and Chair Stanek.
Here. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes, the meeting minutes for the April 1st, 2021 Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Does anyone have any comments on those minutes? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I can make a motion to approve the meeting minutes. Should I do it one by one?
Yeah, let's do each item.
Okay. I initiate a motion to approve the meeting minutes on April 1st.
I can second the motion.
Okay. I don't think there's any discussion. We already asked for that. So let's take a vote.
Commissioner Begor,
Yes.
Commissioner Tombe,
Yes.
Commissioner Kumarapan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Shu,
Yes.
Chair Stanek.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. On to item number 2, the minutes from the meeting of April 8th, 2021, Parks and Recreation Commission special meeting. Is there any discussion about those minutes? Do I have a motion? Oh, go Paul.
Yeah, so 2 corrections, I believe. So if I look into the one, it says approval of minutes, it says minutes for the April 1st. In the April 8th, I think it's, if I look at this correct one, it says minutes of the April 1st. I think it's April 8th, right? In the first one, ceremonial matters after the approval of the minutes, is it the 8th we approved the April 1st. That's why it is. Okay, maybe that's, okay.
No, we didn't approve any minutes in our last meeting at the special meeting. So that's why we have 2 sets of minutes to approve today.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just looking at the minutes of the April 1st meeting will be reviewed for approval at the May 6th meeting, but I thought we should put minutes of April 8th meeting will be reviewed for approval, correct?
Well, we didn't know that at the time, so
I see. Okay,
we just,
that's okay. So whatever, maybe I'm confused. So that's okay. The one comment I have, it is on the first page at the last line. It says Commissioner Kumarapan commented that some of the project's cost seems right, and I just specifically, it's okay to have some, but I think I specifically called out the amphitheater one. That's what I was questioning a lot, so I would like to call that out, because that's a one I really felt the cost was really high relative to others. So others were justified, but that's one I couldn't get it. So maybe if you could explicitly call that out, Staff Whitney, that'll be great. Yeah, that's all, Chair. So nothing else.
okay. Do I have a motion?
I can put a motion to approve the minutes of April 8th with that amendment I requested, with the correction I requested to staff.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Let's take it to a vote.
Commissioner Begor,
Yes.
Commissioner Tombe,
Abstain, as I was not present for the entirety of the meeting.
Commissioner Kumarapan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Shu,
Yes.
and Chair Stanek.
Yes.
Motion carries with 4 votes yes and Commissioner Tombe abstaining.
Okay. Next, we can go to postponements. And do we have any? I don't think we have any postponements. Okay, we'll move on to oral communications, and this is a portion of the meeting reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter that is not on the agenda. If there is anyone in our audience who would like to speak to oral communications, please raise your hand now. We do have some folks from the community here, but they must be here for other items. So there are no hands raised for oral communications. Moving on to written communications, I believe we did have some written communications that were submitted to the commission this afternoon. Is that right, Whitney?
Yes, we received 2 written communications for item 7 for the commission's consideration.
Okay. Moving on to old business, item number 3, the satellite community garden evaluation data and potential satellite garden locations.
Yes, good evening,
Yes.
commissioners. Joanne Marini, Director of Parks and Recreation. And tonight we have with us again, Jeff Ordway, making a guest star appearance, our recreation coordinator for all things gardens. And he will provide a presentation for the satellite community garden evaluation data and potential locations.
Thank you, Joanne. Good evening, Commission. It's a pleasure to be with you again. I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation with all of you. All right, I just want to confirm you all can see the PowerPoint presentation. All right.
Yes.
Tonight we will be discussing satellite gardens and the review of them. Our agenda is to just review a brief history of the satellite garden, the results as it relates to the satellite gardens from the strategic plan park amenity improvement evaluation results. That's a mouthful. And we'll take a look at the top 3 locations that were that rose to the top from that evaluation process. We'll see how the satellite gardens fit into the master plan, and then we will review the recommended actions. So to start off, the satellite gardens were first brought in the CIP projects for the fiscal year 2019-2020, and the City Council allocated $300,000 for the development of satellite gardens throughout the community. All right. I know you've seen a lot of results from the park amenities improvement evaluation. This is specifically all the results from the satellite gardens. Broken down, we have the average of the commission, parks and recreation staff, and PW staff. And then we have an overall average between those 3 groups. We also denote here west side and east side park locations because that is a crucial factor that is being considered. Just a reminder, De Anza Boulevard is kind of the delineation for us to make a determination if it's west or east side at Cupertino. I know there's a lot of data on the sheet, and so we don't turn this into a Lens Crafters commercial. We do have the top 3 sites for you, much larger text for you to be able to look at that data. We didn't include east side, west side, but just as a note here, the Wilson Park is east side and Hoover and Jollyman Park would be considered west side parks. One other note, just wanted to let you know, we did take a look at all city-owned property beyond parks just to see if we could identify another location for a potential satellite garden. We did identify 2 properties that were not already a city facility or a city park that everyone was aware of. When we investigated them further, it was determined that these are sites that have long-term leases with San Jose Water, and due to their infrastructure and security requirements, they would not be a suitable location for a satellite garden. As the satellite gardens relate to the master plan, as you know, we do finally have our master plan completed, and so it's just not a pretty document sitting on a shelf. We're actually putting into action here. How satellite gardens fit into that, we are to develop a community garden implementation plan that identifies suitable sites and priorities for implementation. Add one or more community gardens in underutilized areas or unneeded lawn areas within a park, preferably in an area with high density housing. So that is what we are doing tonight, where we are going to be identifying those locations. And simply our recommended action for you tonight is to review the satellite garden evaluation data and provide input on potential satellite garden locations. That concludes my presentation. It's short and sweet tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Let's go back to our commissioners. Do you have any questions for Jeff? Please raise your hand if you do. Okay. Commissioner Gopal.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff, you just mentioned that other than the top 3, there are other locations also. Is that called out in this? Maybe I didn't see it or I missed it.
It is all the parks that you identified in the evaluation process were on that one slide that I have. I can bring it back up if you'd like. But what we did is we took the top, we wanted to call out for you which were the top 3 sites based on the survey data. That does not limit you to the top 3 sites, but we wanted to make it a little easier just to make sure you knew essentially what rose to the top based on the evaluation process.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Tambe.
So I was just wondering if there was any outreach done to private owners, like complexes and things like that, or was this exclusively just what we had submitted and when we did the park review?
It's based solely on the park evaluations you did, and then a look at specifically city-owned property. We did not reach out to any private property owners.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Shu.
I have a question regarding the ranking of those parks for the community garden and for the park and rec staff average and the public work average. Could you let me know what's the criteria for the ranking? Because I see a big difference for the ranking from the staff and the ranking from commissioner. I'm not sure if it's a section to ask this question.
I would say that staff was given the exact same instructions that commission was given in terms of what we were looking for in this evaluation process. And I think that it just is a reflection of staff's perspective versus your perspective. A lot of times staff may have a perspective and realize something that doesn't work when you think it does, and vice versa. The same happens with Public Works. Public Works does have a different perspective than Parks and Rec staff. And that's why we took a broad scope so we could make sure we were accounting for all those different perspectives.
Okay, so what I understand is from the commissioner's point of view, we just look at this topic like from the normal resident, and for the staff, you know the budget and how the work can, so I just want to know the difference between, because we don't know how to run those public work.
To just speak in very broad strokes and broad terms, from a Parks and Rec perspective, ours would really be coming from an operational standpoint. We know what programs happen in these parks. We know kind of the foot traffic in these parks. We know just the general culture of these parks. And so that operational, I think, was kind of the broad stroke of what framed our perspective. And with Public Works, they know the maintenance, they know all the details about the what to do, like watering, sunlight, all that. And so that's the broad stroke that I think would frame their perspective of how they approached it.
Okay, and actually I asked this question because I saw the Jollyman Park is on the list again, and I remember there are several new projects will start at the same park. So I'm really worried if the residents may worry it may be too crowded for a single park.
And that could be a part of your discussion as a commission as to if you feel Jollyman is appropriate or
Okay,
not.
thank you.
I just realized that we lost Carol. Is that true?
Yeah, it looks like it. Vice Chair
Okay.
Shu, you're up.
You're muted. You're on mute.
So who is the next? Is that Sashi? The
Yeah.
next
Yeah, go
last question.
ahead. Okay. Jeff, you've listed the top 3, 2 of which are on the west side, and 1 is on the east side. And given that the main community park is also going to be on the west side, could you maybe list 3 on the west and 3 on the east, and we kind of decide more of the east side parks? Because as Vice Chair said that, Jollyman has already got multiple projects going on, so it's not an ideal place to stick another thing at this point. And given that, just looking at just the evaluation, of course, it seems to be that always the commissioner's choice and the Public Works are always seem to be at loggerheads. I mean, what we think is some place like if you take Jollyman, I think the commissioner average was 1.67, whereas the Parks and the Public Works has it as 3.5. So it's like it's always, they obviously have more information, but for some reason we're dumping a lot of things in Jollyman Park. So if we could look at the top 3 on the east side, that would be interesting information.
I'm looking at the chart right now, and I can bring it up if you like. But just from my cursory look at it, I believe the top 3 on the east side would first be Wilson Park with a score of 3.33, followed by Creekside Park with a score of 2.56. And I'm sorry, nope, yeah, that's right. Creekside with a score of 2.56, and then finally Portal Park with a score of 2.44. I'll get that chart up so you can all take a look at it.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it, and that's right. And so if you look at the numbers, I think Portal.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I got lost for a minute there, but I'm back now. And so I don't know if you guys took public comment yet. And so I'd like to just stay in questions right now, if that's okay. And if we could stay with questions, go to public questions and comment before we get into our own discussion here. So I apologize that I dropped off. My internet did not do me well. So I think the question to ask to see this slide is fine. I'd like to hold off discussion on that until we get to discussion, if that's okay. Did you have other questions about that, Commissioner Begor?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So Commissioner Tombe.
Yeah, so with the council allocating $300,000, is the assumption for our purpose today to pick a singular park for all of those to be put in, or is it possible, or is the ask to rank choice them and kind of see how many we can put? Where do we anticipate those? I know 300K doesn't go very far, especially in Cupertino during these construction times. So I was just wondering, what is the hope here?
So yeah, I'll speak to that. We would like to have, at least 2 or 3 choices for implementation purposes. We're hoping that the 300,000 actually will do at least 3 sites. And again, it does depend on accessibility, ADA, and I think that's kind of where the public works perspective comes into it, especially if you look at Portal Park, there's different areas where, access in this particular area might be challenging just because of a path of travel. So that's where I think the perspectives start to get skewed a bit. But I think we would like to have, a few choices so that we can further vet. There will be irrigation issues, there will be ADA issues, there will be shade issues, storage issues. So what we're trying to do is maximize how many beds we can get in, but within those ramifications. And we're thinking that it might be about $50,000 to $100,000 per site. That's what we're estimating.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any more questions from the commission? If not, I will go to our attendees and see if any of the public would like to comment on this agenda item. Okay, I do not see any hands up from the public on this agenda item. Nisha, you're on our screen and with your fingers. You're very big on my screen right now. So I'll bring it back to the commission now for comment and discussion. And is there anyone who would like to go first on that? Commissioner Tombe.
I'll kick it off. So it was my understanding when the city council opted to take a mid-size cost approach to the Memorial Park instead of the fancy rodent-free one. And the intent was so that we could get more money to put plots on the east side. And so I hesitate to use money that we pretty explicitly were like, okay, this needs to go to the east side because the east side is missing these facilities. And I know water access and, if there's no water pipe, how are you going to have a garden kind of is a big issue, especially when we're about to head into another drought. But I would just hesitate to commit to putting more on the west side as it is. I don't know the infrastructure at Creekside, but I think that just having been there, it seems like a really good park to have a site. And I think having it at Wilson is great. Wilson is also a fairly high trafficked park as is. So keeping it in the option because it's on the east side makes sense. But I actually think bringing Creekside back into the mix would be great. And then in terms of the top 3 that were brought up, we have a lot going on at Jollyman between the all-inclusive playground and the off-leash dog area and all the sports activities that are played. It's very, very high traffic. So I just don't necessarily know if that's the ideal location. But I would hesitate to put something, on the west side and say Monte Vista Park near my house because there's not as much high-density housing there, and people have backyards, they can plant in their backyards. So I just I don't necessarily want to see, I think that's the other extreme. But yeah, I would love to bring Creekside back in, and I don't necessarily know that Jollyman is the ideal place, just given everything that's kind of already happening in that space.
Okay, thank you. I did have a question that I forgot to ask, and that was last time we looked at this, I think we looked at where we had requests from gardeners and how where they were in the city, and especially looking at the east side. So I'm hoping that maybe you have some of that data that we could look at that with respect to the particular parks that are high on the list.
I don't have that data readily available. right now. It would take some digging to see if we could find it.
I think that would help our discussion. Okay, let's go to Commissioner Shu.
Yeah, I actually agree with Commissioner Tombe for the comments on Jollyman Park and the Creekside Park. Yeah, it looks like Creekside Park. It's maybe it has a lot of space, but there's no much facility there, and it's close to those neighborhoods that people only live in apartment or maybe in townhouse. There's no backyard, so looks like it's a good location for the community garden, and it may meet the residents' need. That's why it has a high score. And I saw another park is the Portal Park has high score because it's on the north side. The north side, yeah, there's also apartment, yeah, high density apartment there. But looks like for the staff rating of these two parks, the score is very low, only 1.67. So is that because there's no existing water pipe, or is there some specific reason for the low score? I'm just hope to know.
Yeah, I think staff took things into consideration. Sorry, Jeff, to interrupt you, like parking, accessibility, how far away they would have to travel with their supplies. And so I think we were looking at it from, that kind of standpoint. I know you look at Creekside and you see all these open fields, but those open fields are utilized by teams, on a normal basis. So it kind of gives this, idea that there's open space when really there is very little open space at Creekside. And so I think we were looking at it operationally, like who utilizes these parks as well. And then from the accessibility standpoint, the parking standpoint. So we were looking at all those factors as well to consider. But I think we wanted to bring you the information based on how we all scored to have this discussion. I would say that staff very much agrees with what is being stated by the commissioners about the east side being prioritized. And I think what we need to do, and what, like I had said, offer up a couple and rank them, is that we will vet them in that order. And then we'll come back to you. If we have more money, we'll keep going down the list.
Yeah, thank you for the information.
Do you have any more comments, Commissioner Shu?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Begor.
Given that, the satellite garden was supposed to be really targeted on the east side, and with these three parks on the list, can we actually not consider Jollyman at all, because we know there's a lot of activity there, and it's just Creekside. I'm sorry, then it would be Wilson, Hoover, give or take Creekside, Portal. Should we as a commission think about that? Because I don't believe Jollyman needs any more activity at this point. There's just too much going on there. And it's not a big enough park, when compared to either Creekside and or, probably this is about the same size as Portal, but definitely smaller than Creekside. So just too much going on. So as a commission, should we think of just taking Jollyman off that list?
Okay, Jeff, can you put up can we just keep looking at the list? Because that would help us, I think, as we're going through this discussion. Okay. Commissioner Begor, do you have any other comments?
No, that's it. That's all I had.
Okay, so what I heard from you is, let's keep up the full list. Is that, I'm hearing a lot of support for East Side. Jollyman being very busy, but it is a West Side park as well. You know, Wilson ends up being highly rated here on the east side. Creekside has a lot going on, but there may be a portion in a different area. And then there's Portal, and those are the large neighborhood. You know, Sterling Barnhart is little, and then we have the Library Field and Civic Center Plaza. Commissioner Gopal, do you want to make some comments on the discussion?
Sure, thank you. There are two comments. Number one, I do support many other commissioners' views on getting onto the east side, especially on the Creekside Park. And I was about to ask that why 1.67, but I think Commissioner Shu asked, and then I got the answer. So that's okay. So I do support to really get into the Creekside Park, given that a lot of community around it with apartments and others. So that's one. Number two, I have a question on Variant Park, where I know the commissioner put 1, but whereas the park and recreation staff 3.75 and 3.4, because if I look at it, it's 2.7. It's almost like a third place content around the 1. And I'm trying to find out, is just on an operational perspective, is what it made us 3.75 and the 3.4, because as a commissioner, we looked at it based on the communities around us. They have things. We thought that it may not be the suitable place, but I see an extreme score compared to many others. If at all, if I ask, that's the second highest score by both staff from a park and rec and the public works. What is the rationale behind that one? Is it
Sure,
a community around it?
I'll try to speak to that. There are orchards in that park, and so we thought it probably would be a good tie-in. There are multiple access points around the neighborhood to, enter that park, as well as the land available, the lack of shade, because shade tends to be an issue. So there were a couple of different things, but again, like you're saying, it's on the west side, and so I don't think we considered the region, and we probably should have. Hindsight being 2020, we, again, we could have made many improvements on these rating sheets, and so that was a mistake that we had made at the beginning. And so I think it is very important to consider the region at this point.
Okay, yeah, just to close that, I will close my thoughts just with that comment that I think operational is accessibility, all of them are okay, but I think if the need itself is not felt by the commissioners based on that, I think we should not even consider. That's where I'm looking at it. If there is no need, that's what we think based on it, then it doesn't matter whether it's accessible or not. I don't want to get into it because it's the lowest one. So then we don't want to sway our needs because it's based on the need, based on the number of residents could use this one. So that's what my comment is based on. So, but I still support the Creekside Park. So that's pretty much, Chair.
Okay. Director, how many beds do we think we could get in some of these satellite ones? I'm just trying to compare it to what we've got, what we will have at McClellan.
We're hoping around 15 to 20.
Okay, so even if we were to do all 3 of these more on the east side, we would still end up with maybe half the number we have at McClellan. Is that right?
A little over 100. So if we were able to get 30 at each, we wouldn't be close, but.
Well, no, but if you're talking about 15 to 20 at each one.
Oh, sorry. Yes, 15 to 20. Sorry. I was thinking.
Yeah, so 15 at each one. If we were to do 3 on the east side, that would be 45. If we were to squeeze out a few more, maybe we could get to 50. But even between those 3 sites, it would still only be half of what we're looking at McClellan. So from I was thinking, well, do we want to have a couple on the east side and still have one more on the west side? But even if we did all 3 and said, let's go see if we can do all of these 3, it would still be less than, or maybe half of what we're looking at McClellan. So
just a quick note on that, the bed sizes would also be smaller than what we do have at McClellan Ranch. McClellan Ranch, they are 6 by 16 feet, and we're looking at something much smaller. This is not an exact size, but roughly close to the 4x8
Okay.
size,
So
but that would
when
be determined later.
I'm just trying to think of equity, but I'm thinking even if we did, say, our top 3 to go investigate, all 3 of those may not come back as feasible, first of all, but even if they were all done on the east side, we would not be tipping the scale in any real sense to have more on the east side or be ignoring the west side. We would still have more on the west side. And so to do more, another satellite on the west side would be sort of increasing the inequity, if you will. So Commissioner Tombe.
So I think it's pretty clear from all our comments that we're going to put forward East Side parks for consideration, and there's really not that many in terms of the ones that are, we can't use the special use site, so it's just 4 remaining. But I would wonder also if we can maybe put out a call to action to the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce and see if somebody in the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce can send out messaging to their group of restaurants and small businesses. One of the things that I've had a passion for, but unfortunately there's so much going on we haven't gotten to is parklets. And it's been a really, really big hit to have these outdoor spaces during the pandemic. People are getting used to having these integrated shared spaces. And I think it would be, that might be a really good option, and specify, like, we are looking for folks on the east side who would be willing to contribute or to open up spaces that have XYZ criteria on the east side of Cupertino, and see if maybe we can partner with them directly, because businesses need traction and traffic too. So I'm sure that there's a lot of hope that will bring something as well. So that would just be my addition. But otherwise, I think the east side parks make the most sense to me. I would rank it Creekside, Wilson, and Portal. I think Sterling Barnhart is a little bit on the smaller side, and I don't want to cut into the limited space that they already have. But if I had to give an order, that would be mine.
Okay. Commissioner Bogord? You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So this is actually for Director Joanne. When you look at the Park and Rec evaluation of the library field, it is quite low. Is this because there's already things that you were planning to do there, like the cricket field and things like that? Can you explain why that is 1.5? Surprisingly, Public Works, and we thought it would be the same, ranked at the same.
Yeah, I would say that due to the fact that it's the only site for cricket to utilize, that is the reason behind the ranking.
Okay, and Jeff had mentioned, just sort of a follow-on this, Jeff had mentioned that the site, the beds would be much smaller. Would they be half of what is
out at McClellan
what is
Ranch.
there? Yeah, McClellan Ranch. Okay.
I mean, McClellan Ranch has quite a big footprint, so we were able to accommodate much bigger beds than we would at some of the park sites.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking of it, even if it is half the size from the library field, I guess if you have a cricket field going on there, there's very little space left for anything else. Okay.
Okay, I don't see any more commission hands. I did want to make one other comment, and I think it's just something to keep in mind. I think what we're deciding here today is a direction of where to go to investigate and to determine feasibility with cost and space and water and accessibility and all of those things. So I don't think there's anything set in stone that we're doing tonight. We're saying, here's a direction we'd like to go. And with that, since it's not set in stone, one of the things I think we need to keep in mind and balance is that we also still will be looking at a lot of parks for the off-leash areas. And so it may be that the best park for an off-leash area may be one of the ones that we're also looking at for a satellite garden. And the question is, can it handle both, or is there an alternative to one of those two activities in one of those parks? So I think we want to make sure we're not just getting tunnel vision on a particular subject because it's coming before us. We want to continue to look at everything that we're considering at the parks as a system. So with that, are you looking for a motion or just direction from us today?
Just really direction, and I think that we've gotten it. We will definitely pursue the 3 larger East Side parks, and look further into it and pursue all the logistics involved.
Terrific. I think that makes sense, and I think that is definitely a very united thought from the commission. So that makes it a lot easier. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is item number 4, the Jollyman Park All-Inclusive Playground.
So I will take that item. I'm sure that you've all read the staff report and the update and the background for those of you who maybe weren't on the commission when this project was initiated, but wanted to provide you an update that due to the fundraising level effort that was needed for being so high and due to COVID, the project was basically rescoped and the budget was lowered to have a fundraising goal of $1 million. So the overall budget is now $3.65 million. And that item went to the Board of Supervisors for approval for the rescoping or the amendment, and was approved on April 20th, so just a couple weeks ago. And so our next steps include a design consultant selection process, which will occur during the summer of 2021, as well as launching the fundraising process during spring of 2021, which we are coming up short on here. And then a robust public input process in summer 2021 as the design progresses. And so I would like to introduce Susan Michael, who is here, our CIP manager, who you're familiar with from our last meeting. She's here to answer any questions that you might have, but I know that Commission was looking for a more formal update on this item, and so we are finally able to bring it to you. So we're very excited about this moving forward.
Great, thank you. So you said the scope was revised. Is that up, down? What was it before?
I'm not sure offhand, because I wasn't here at the time, but it was reduced significantly. Joanne, do you have that handy?
I don't have it handy. I know that there was maybe 1 or 2 elements eliminated from the overall footprint that was put forth initially. So it sounds like a huge, reduction, but we really didn't lose a lot of elements, is my understanding.
Right. It's still rather amazing what it's planned.
Yes, and unfortunately for all of you, Susan and I are so new that we kind of can't compare and contrast because we weren't really here for the onset. So we're just slowly getting up to speed.
Okay, Commissioner Tombe.
If I remember correctly, you said, I think it's about roughly like 750K lower, almost $1 million lower than it was, if I remember correctly from the previous.
It might even be more that, I think it might, you're triggering my memory. I want to say that there was $5.4 million originally allocated with the grant and whatnot.
With the grant, yeah. With the grant.
So now the total is 3.65 million.
Okay, so it's over what I remember.
Yeah. And we worked significantly with the county to reduce the scope and budget and timeline to something that was just more realistic and achievable, well considered, you could say. So we're very happy with where we're at now, that we can just get started with something that we feel much better about achieving, getting it done for the city.
So I'm very excited about this project and have been for many years now. My question is more specifically around, so I know we're looking at like design consultants and things like that, but we still have this major fundraising initiative. Are we talking to Magical Bridges? Are we talking to organizations like this that do the fundraising? Because from what I remember when we had last spoken about this, is that there needs to be an RFP sent out to even organizations that would help us fundraise before we could partner with them to fundraise. So I was just curious where we were on that side of things, or are we just as a city going to essentially try to do it ourselves?
No, we actually did do an RFP for a fundraising consultant, and we're this close to executing the contract for that scope of work, and so that will begin momentarily. We're actually very close to getting that done, and we also we have one or two relationships that we also internally want to see if we want to reach out to those Cupertino businesses to see if they're interested in contributing to the fundraising, so that it would lessen the scope of work for the fundraisers. And then also we're putting on RFP for design services for the next steps, and that includes the outreach and the programming and things like that.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Kumarapan.
Sure, thank you. Susan, I think you already partly answered one of the questions I was about to ask on the fundraising part. Two questions. One, when you say that when you just said that the scope has reduced or worked with the county, I'm trying to understand from a 5.x to 3.x. That means, is it the park amenities or whatever we plan to do has been reduced, or what scope has been reduced?
So I'd have to do a little bit more research to be able to answer that with much confidence. Yeah, I know that one of the things that was mentioned to me was that there will be an effort to use more pre-made elements rather than customizing as much as had been previously planned. So that will not only shorten, make it less expensive, but also shorten the delivery time and just make it more probably easier to maintain as well.
Okay. Maybe the second question on the timelines, and I see the report. This all depends on getting the fund raised as well, or do we plan to start it and then keep going, and then while you're doing a fundraising? So what is the process where we are going to say that yes, we're going to kickstart the process, because there is a fund from the county, right, that 1.4 million, whatever, it's available, and if I remember correctly last time, hey, that's for 1 year, you need to really kickstart the project at 1 year. There was some timeline attached to it. So my question is on kind of a manifold. One is, do we have a timeline attached by the Board of Supervisors from the county side on when we have to utilize that fund? That's one. Number two, is our fundraising of that 1 million, not just the city allows, but there is a 1 million we need to raise fund. And is there any dependency so that if that gets into risk, whether we are going to stop or we are going to start only after we reach some threshold, is this project going to kickstart? What is the timeline we are talking about, and how this is going to work?
Well, we are doing the fundraising and trying to initiate that as we speak. And the design services RFP is the next thing. So you can see that they will be going concurrent. We won't be waiting until the fundraising has happened before we get the design process started. We do have funds allocated from both the city and the county that are ready to be implemented. So that is definitely the case. I would have to pull up the amendment to see, but I believe there is a county expectation for the calendar. Director, do you have that at hand or looking that one up?
I don't.
Yeah. So I know that we have to provide quarterly updates to them, and we can find out what the final date is. It says construction will be finished by winter 23, and I'm thinking that might have been determined by the county. We need to get this going and get it happened. And those are when the funds run out. So
Okay, thank you.
I don't have a better answer for that. Yeah.
Oh no, I think it's good if you get more information later. It's okay. I look forward to, simply because if that fundraising of 1 million is a must, that because we don't want to hang the project until halfway through or partly after, because this is not happening kind of, and means we need to jump in to help, and what are the things we need to drive to get that 1 million, right? Fundraising.
Right.
So that's the context behind my question. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions from commissioners, I will go to public and see if there's any public comment on this item. And at this time, I do not see any public comment, so I'll bring it back to the commission for any discussion. I think this is just an update, so I thank.
Sorry, I do.
Okay, Commissioner Tombe.
So I understand that with the change of scope, we're going to have to go with a lot more prefab setups for the inclusive playground. One of the things that I do want to make sure that we stay true to is the diversity that's inside Cupertino. I noticed that, the Magical Bridges in Palo Alto, their little tree house had like tea and crumpets and like little cakes, and it would be great to have like, diverse things on there, not just like crumpets, which like, I don't even know if most kids in Cupertino have even eaten a crumpet before, but they've definitely eaten like boba or like a pot sticker or, whatever it is, just making sure that we're being inclusive, both in terms of the small elements, but also in terms of like, hey, the artwork, like we can source our own artists for that kind of work, and making sure that it's culturally representative and not just like the same playground that you can find in any all-inclusive playground, but just something that's really like, this is Cupertino. Even if it's like a couple of elements will be like, oh yeah, see that like pretend boba thing in the corner, like you wouldn't get that anywhere else. So just making sure that's made really clear to the design team that that's something that's important. And then the other thing that we learned in the master plan that's really important is making sure that there's natural elements. And of course, there's a big part of all-inclusive playgrounds that has to have certain kinds of textures and certain kinds of like colors or lack thereof. But if we can just make sure that we're incorporating that as it's appropriate for an all-inclusive playground, that would be great too. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hsu.
I just want to share some idea about the donation. So in the Magical Bridge Playground at Palo Alto, I'm not sure if you notice, there's a donation wall with all the colorful bricks. May I share the picture of that wall?
Sure. When I dropped off, I lost being a co-host, so I don't have any control of that. Do you have a share screen button?
I think I can share now.
Okay. So, now I'm co-host again. Thank you. The gremlin's in the background. Okay, we can see it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea for, it may promote people to donate. If you donate maybe $1,000 and you can put your name and your family's name on the colorful brick. Then for people with special need kids, because I know in our school district, I think Palo Alto and Cupertino may be the two top districts have the most special need kids in Silicon Valley. So I think it's a great way to promote them to this playground in our community.
Yeah, that's very nice. I seem to remember when we went to the playground in San Jose, was it the one that was built by the Rotary? They had something similar. There was a wall of the donors that could be acknowledged.
Yeah, and so and my point is not only to honor the big donors, they can have a big break, but we should have as many as small one as we can to encourage the small donor, the residents to donate.
Yeah, and that's a good idea.
And that's all.
Okay, are there any other comments? Thank you for the presentation, and we look forward to hearing more updates as we go through the process. As I'm sure there are milestones that we need to meet, and as we keep moving through, we look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you. We're excited to take the project to the next level. Yeah.
Thanks for becoming a regular, Susan.
My pleasure, actually.
Okay, great. Thank you. We will move on to the next agenda item, which will be item number 5, the community funding grant policy.
Okay, and so Rochelle Sander, who is the Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation, is going to provide a PowerPoint on this item, and it's to discuss the grant policy and provide input on potential changes for improvement with a focus on eligibility.
So I couldn't let you guys forget about it. Had to come back and do a little bit more. So here's our community funding. All right. So the agenda tonight consists of the background of the community funding policy, eligibility and evaluation criteria and guidelines, fiscal year 21-22 eligibility, and commission input. The current community funding grant policy was adopted by City Council at their December 1st, 2020 meeting. The approved policy included an earlier submission date for applications, a program funding range, and affirmation that all qualified applicant materials would be brought to City Council. The updated policy was applied during the fiscal year 21-22 community funding grant application process. This item is on the May 18th City Council meeting agenda to consider the Parks and Recreation Commission's funding recommendation and determine funding for the upcoming fiscal year. Through this year's process, staff and commission encountered parts of the community funding grant policy that could be adjusted to clarify eligibility and what programs, projects, and events the grant program is intended to fund. Here are the existing eligibility requirements, restrictions and guidelines, and evaluation criteria. The Commission should consider these 3 categories to eliminate overlap, to ensure that eligibility requirements can be applied consistently to applicants, and that it does not exclude programs, services, and events that the program is intended to fund. 3 of the categories that require additional discussion to determine final eligibility were: be awarded only once per project, be for specific needs, not ongoing operational costs, and have more than 75% of the requested funds allocated for direct service costs versus administrative costs. Having recently facilitated the grant program process, we would like the Commission to provide input on the existing policy and potential changes that could be made to improve it. So if you guys would like to communicate anything to us, we would love to listen and figure out how we can make things go smoother next year.
I guess I have one question. I guess I'd like to hear from staff what your recommendations are in the places where you felt you had particular concerns in bringing it to the Commission, and where you think the improvements could be specifically.
Well, I think it really depends on how the Commission feels with each of the sections, but obviously eligibility, when we brought it to the Commission, it's your final decision no matter what. But I would like to see that we're all on a similar page of understanding what all of that is. So whether it be to maybe articulate better some of those points, because I feel it's important also that the organizations understand what all of the eligibility and criteria mean.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions on this? No one has their hand up right now. I had a question in mind, and I'm trying to think how to phrase it. So if we look at some of them, I guess one of the questions was, if something comes in incomplete, is there an ability for staff to go back to the organizations for clarification? Because I feel like we had some gaps, and that staff reviewed what was presented, but I didn't feel like the organizations had much opportunity to address any of the shortcomings before it came to the commission. Is that true? And is that something that we could look at?
So completeness for staff is mostly that they've filled out the application completely in the way of answered all the questions necessary, put in all the information necessary. Our goal with adding that second meeting was that you all had the chance to follow up with any questions for those organizations to truly pull out the information you needed to rate them after that fact. So that was part of our hope for that very first meeting on the commission side.
Okay, if I don't see any other questions, let me see if there's any public comment on this, and then we'll bring it back for a discussion. If there's any public comment on the community funding policy, please raise your hand now. I don't see any comment from the community, so let's bring it back to the commission and hear your thoughts about this. Commissioner Begor.
Okay, so I think there was a list of the 15 or how many ever we had for the community grant this time. A lot of them were considered quote unquote ineligible, which is, because they did not meet whatever the requirements were. And we kind of changed that whole process sort of on the fly by saying, make an exception here, make an exception there. Now, I understand they did not meet the criteria. And one of the criteria there is that 75% of the requested costs allocated should be for direct services as opposed to administrative. How do we judge if they say that it is not administrative costs, but then they use it for administration later, or, how do we know? Maybe it's inexperience. How do we know? Because some of these people are coming in for a community grant for the first time. They may or may not be spending the time to actually understand that very clearly. How do we know? How do we judge that?
So in the applications, it does ask for them to specify their funding. And so hopefully you would be able to see whether they're saying they're using it for staffing costs or they're using it for something that is ongoing. Otherwise, that would be great questions to ask them during that first meeting. But just so you know, if it is after the fact, like if it has been approved by both you and council and gone through, they do have follow-up forms and information they have to send us about how they spent the money. So that would be something that we could look at the next year to decide whether or not this group really did present themselves correctly.
Okay. So my concern comes from, what happened. I mean, last year was a bad year where people could not really do what they said they would do. It's a bad year to use as an example, but however, it is a year which kind of put things in perspective as far as I was concerned. Like, for example, we granted the Rotary $12,000 the previous year, and they put out a newsletter. Now, I don't think the newsletter cost $12,000, but if they spent the $12,000 on the newsletter, that's a colossal waste of taxpayer money. Rotary as an organization has more than enough money to put out a newsletter. I don't know if they did anything else, but I remember at that meeting. So how do we avoid, allowing such things to happen in the future, because that was really my concern this time, because they became ineligible, but because of other, including other things, we had to include them again. They get granted. Now, if they're not able to, for county reasons, hold that, whatever it is, the fall festival, as they say they do, they put out another newsletter. Is that okay? How do we prevent that from happening?
What I'd like to do is keep this more generic and not on the specific organizations. I mean, my understanding of Rotary was very different from yours, and I think they used the money in a very different way, but I don't think I want to have that discussion tonight. I think what we want to do is
let me bring that up. Well, let me bring that up a level. So if we were to say if they did not use the money as they were expected to use it, they become automatically ineligible?
I think that's something we could decide to do, but I think we need to we need to look at that
okay.
Going forward. Commissioner Tomei, we'll get to you. I promise we'll get to you. So I think that is part of the evaluation. And
okay.
Again, like you said, it was a pandemic year. A lot of things didn't happen the way things were.
Obviously,
expected.
yeah. That's why I gave that long explanation.
So
it's not
I
going to be normal.
Right.
But the other side of it is a lot of them won't be able to have, some of them may not be able to have their event even before we come in for evaluation. So what is our setback on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. That's a good question. It's something that we should discuss. Commissioner Tomei.
Director Magrini, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe we had a process in place for folks who weren't able to do their event as they had initially requested. They actually came back to us with specifics on exactly what they would do with the funding, and then we had an opportunity to approve that or reject that. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
We had the Heart of the Valley, I believe, came back to a meeting. But what I just want to mention is that the unfortunate part of the way this process works is the way we fund, we don't get the report until the following year. So we would have to it would be a year lapse basically of getting the report and reviewing how the funds were spent.
Yeah, so actually this is where something Commissioner Zhu had said probably 2 months ago, which was adding a stipulation in their, when they receive the money, that the report must come right within 2 weeks or within 1 month of, the event, or latest by the filing of their next event. So that way we can track it sooner, because I want to make sure that that we can. So if like an organization is doing something in September, we should know by by mid-October how they spent the money, all the details of the event. We shouldn't have to wait until the whole thing. Whether or not we review that is a different story, but we do need to have that information from them in advance. And then the way that Heart of the Valley had come back, I would love to codify that into our process, saying, hey, we're giving you this money with a very specific intent. If you are planning on changing this for any particular reason, you need to come back to us and get an approval beforehand. I'm also comfortable with Parks and Rec staff, because a lot of times this stuff has a really fast turnaround. We might not be able to get it on an agenda because we only meet once a month, which is why we should meet twice a month. But having, I'm totally fine with staff knows budgeting process and whether or not something makes sense. Incorporating that, if commission is eligible to review, then review, or if not, then staff will review in lieu of the commission, so that we can just make sure that those funds are being, spent the way we had envisioned that they would be for the community. I don't see anything wrong with us asking that. It's taxpayer dollars. We need to make sure we're using that responsibly. With regard to the specific points that were outlined, in terms of eligibility, I was actually wondering if we could bring that chart back up, which I loved, by the way. That was fantastic. One of the things that I did want to flag is the Let's see, where is it? There we go. I need to close this so it's bigger on my screen. I mean, I can look at it on my application. Okay, so the be awarded only once per project, I think that actually, makes sense to me. But I think that sometimes there might be a project that's really, really successful. And if we don't have a way to help them institutionalize those kinds of projects, similar to what we did with the Historical Society, I would say like once per project in like a 3-year span or in a 2-year span, basically bound that a little bit. So it's not like, okay, if you have like a service that you're providing to, the folks at the senior center, that's the only time you'll ever be able to have that event supported by this grant program. I think maybe once every 3 years for a project like that. But definitely want to make sure it's project specific, not organization specific. And then in terms of the specific needs for operational costs, we saw a couple of the services had found ways around that, which was really heartening. The dental health organization, and they were using it mostly for our for their like infrastructure and like their systems and things like that. So I would just, however, if they came to me and were like, hey, we need to supplement the time of the dentist, I actually wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that. So I think that I don't know if I know it's becoming squishy, so I wonder if there's a way to incorporate that. And then the last flag, well, this is the actual flag, is we had a request from a high school group. And I am very, very cautious about us funding high school. And you know me, I love making sure we can fund all the community programs. So for me saying this is because if we're saying that we're gonna fund one booster organization, or one high school or one school specific organization that's affiliated with that school, we basically open up a can of worms in terms of funding every single other school in the district. And then I just don't want that open. So I'm not sure if we can add another eligibility requirement here that says if you are a booster organization for a specific school. So again, for me, it's school related, because if you do it for Monte Vista, you have to do it for Lynbrook. You have to do it for, or not Lynbrook, but the other schools that are in the area. And I just want to make sure that that stays fair. And yeah, so that would be my additional eligibility requirement recommendation.
May I make one point of clarification?
Yeah, what's up?
I just wanted to say, just a reminder, they do have to put how they used their funds from the previous year in their application for the next year. So even though we don't get the reports until the year after, they do have to tell us how they spent their money before we make the decisions. So that's just a quick.
Yeah, I remember that in the thing. I just think we need it even faster. A little impetus for them to know that there's folks paying attention.
Okay, Commissioner Gopal.
Right. So unfortunately, I couldn't be there throughout the discussion, so I had to be out, and I'm not sure, but at least looked at it based on the discussions. I mean, based on the reports I see. I got a few comments, and I think it may be a little bit opposite to what Commissioner Tompe said too. Number one, the eligibility be awarded only once per project. What I see is that I see this funding as a seed fund. That means for any organization, they take it once and they do it. That's a seed fund. If you become as a constant stream of funding source, if the organizations comes with more than a year or two projects and and especially with the established organizations, and if you see that many of them are like, we are keep on giving them three, at least I see 3 or 4 of them, we typically give every year. So what does that mean is that it is restricting the new folks to come in. I know this time I saw that like a lot many. I know they haven't met some of the eligible criteria. That's why they may be out. I understand. But what it puts this eligibility criteria is that it's putting it is kind of biased towards a well-established organization, which can come up with any different project anytime, which could be in a different way. Then you keep on funding it. That shows that more than 50% of the time, you are you become a constant funding source of that organization. We need to have an eligibility. I know we have the scoring model, but yet I don't think that that is serving properly. I'm not asking to immediately go and visit completely on that, but I think every organization, if it is per project, I know we don't want to limit per organization. That's what we started. But somehow we are end up in giving to the similar organization at least 30-40% of the time. I see the same organization coming back and forth because they're well established. They can put a lot of things. Whereas the high school, I understand high school may be an extreme use case, but any others would come with a new, and we are not able to provide the seed funding. Should be an angel investment. That's how it should be considered. That means we are not able to do it. I do not know which eligible criteria will help make, or some constraint we need to put in there. So the be awarded only once per project is good, but it is also a company, an organization come up with a different projects every year. So that's about I have a concern. It is kind of force fitting the model, and it's not allowing the newcomers where we are not able to see. That means you become again a constant stream of funding source. That is by default taken into their budget planning. I will get 10K, 15K, 20K from this. By default, I know that I will get it. So I think we are setting a precedence for it. So that's one thing I have it. The second part I have is that the validation part, and I know Commissioner Behur brought it up, and I'm not sure how we are going to verify it. The 75% request for allocate for direct service cost versus there's still it's an ambiguity there. I'm not sure even if you put the strict ways, I don't see a way we go and find it out. And that's what I have no clue about how do we really market. That's just a comment. But the main ask is that we need to think about how do we fund by allowing more and more. I would like to see a completely different organizations next year. These organizations, I'm not saying they should not get it. They should be like once they get it, pass for 2 years. Come back. It opens up a door for others. We are not putting it there, which I'm sure that many people might have felt. You know what? The same people will get every time. Why I need to even apply? So we are stopping them. We will stop those things. So that's my comment. I don't have any specific things on how to call it out in it, but that eligible criteria has to be. This has to address that comment. So that's pretty much my input.
Commissioner Begor?
Yeah, so Gopal pretty much said exactly what I was going to say, so I won't repeat. I'll just suffice to say that we should have better criteria. But the other side of it is if an organization gets, like, say, a discount on, usage of facilities, do they then, is there some way we're capturing that in the eligibility criteria to say, okay, then you don't get a community fund? So if, example, somebody is using, the Quinlan Center for something, and they get a discount on that, then they don't come in and say, okay, I'm having this at the Quinlan Center, so I want a grant. Is that built into somewhere in the eligibility, or is that not?
Not at this time. So there is a website where you can see what every group gets from the city funding wise for nonprofits. And I think we showed that maybe January. But so there is that website so that you can see that. But there's also not waivers given to groups outside of what you will see on that website. So a nonprofit that comes in to rent Quinlan, they're all looked at exactly the same. They get the nonprofit fee and that's it. You have to go through city council to get any kind of waiver. We don't decide on any discounts or anything. So everything you would see on that page has been approved by council for any kind of fee waiver, whether it be a festival or whatever. But in your current eligibility that is written that you can see, there's nothing that states that. However, that could be something, I want you to think about the fact that you not only have eligibility, you also have your rating criteria. So maybe someone is eligible to turn in the application and for you guys to look at it, but maybe you rate them differently because you decide criteria wise that you want that to be something in there. So just remember there kind of are two different factions going on here.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I think you explained that much clearer in my head than I was able to ask the question. But
then-
yeah, they come under a different category when they apply for it. Okay.
And then Rochelle, correct me if I'm wrong, they would still have to indicate that they have a waiver of some sort in the application form.
Yes, so the application does also ask if they've gotten any other funding from the city or any other funding from outside sources. So really in your application, you see a full picture of anything they've gotten for the program that they are asking you about.
Will they have that? Will they have, say, I got the Quinlan Center for discount because I'm a nonprofit? I have never seen that detail.
Well, it's not considered a discount because nonprofits just get it at a certain fee. So no, they would not.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Shu, I'll get to you in a second, but I just wanted to sort of give a counterpoint, another perspective on the way that Commissioner Kumarapan has described the community funding. So what I've seen over the years is there are some festivals that the city believes are beneficial from a community building perspective. And in fact, some of them, the city used to staff and manage. And for those, there came a time when maybe the city didn't have the resources to do that, and other organizations have stepped up. And those are annual festivals that are huge for the city. And that's where we see some of the organizations, they said, okay, we'll take these on, but city, will you help us in doing that? And the city said, yeah, it's easier to write a check than it is to staff the whole thing. And so that's how some of these developed. And so I think that has been historically, and we can always do something different, but historically there are activities that are going on in the city. And that's why you see some of these organizations coming back year after year, because those have been recognized as valuable activities for the city. Maybe they should be looked at, like Commissioner Tombe said, like the Historical Society, that we want this to happen every year, and let's just put it in the budget and not consider it part of the community funding. And maybe that should be a way to separate the two, because there is competition. If there's one pie, and you can only cut it up in so many ways. So I think what here, where it was be awarded only once per project, I think my perspective this year when we were doing that, which was different from staff, and where they were saying these organizations aren't eligible, they were seeing an annual event being the same project. And I think when we looked at that, it's like, no, an event is the project, and if it happens again the next year, that's a whole nother project, and it needs to be looked at separately. It's a separate event. It's not an ongoing project that is continuing. So I think that's the difference. And so I just wanted to put those comments out there. And next we'll get to Commissioner Shu.
I just have some comments about, I agree that so the whole process should encourage the new organization to apply. And for some old organization, I know some festival is really important to Cupertino residents, and that's a great event. But because COVID-19, the festival didn't hold last year, and this year it may, we don't know if it will be there, but looks like because we have the trust for the old organization, so they have some advantage compared to new organization, and they can still get money. So I just hope the whole game can be fair to the new one, because we already had maybe some good memory for the old one. Maybe we need to do something to encourage the new one. And I have another question. Yeah, we ask Gabon, how can we track if there are more than 75% of the requested funds allocated to the service instead of administrative costs? Yeah, that's also my question. Yeah, that's all.
So there is a space in the application where they are asked to break down their costs. And so they are supposed to be somewhat specific with that. And so I don't know if you noticed on some of the ones that came in this time, but some of them said whether it was materials and supplies or whether it was staffing, or so you really can kind of add up, because they give you the total for each line item also. So you can pretty much add up how much of it is going toward the administrative costs or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges last year was this specific needs, not ongoing operational costs. And some of the organizations were asking for funds that would allow them to expand the exact services that they already provide. And so it was just doing more of the same, and they were maybe bringing on additional staff to do that. And that made me uncomfortable, because I felt like that was really more like ongoing operational, but it was expanding something. Commissioner Tombe?
Yeah, so that I didn't know the history behind a lot of the festival side of things, but I'm actually more, and that makes sense. Like, the city didn't have bandwidth to continue it, but it was crucial to the community. Therefore, these other organizations stepped up. I think that making it something a little bit more like historical society would be more apt, because if it is part of something that we do want to see regularly, it should happen like that. The reason I'm hesitant to make it be awarded once per organization is that then you have organizations like West Valley Community Services, and that's like it's an organization about like combating homelessness and making sure people are fed, but everything that they've asked us for in the past and even now has been like for specific things that they need support with. And I don't want to pull that just because it's the same organization when they're serving Cupertino residents. I'm the in-house VC at my company. So when it comes to like investing, that's like my area of expertise. But there are some people who stick it at a seed investment, and then there's other investors who are seed investors that go on to lead the Series A and the Series B and the Series C, which means that they're not only saying, yes, this is worth it, they're saying, yes, this is worth it, and I really believe in it, which is why I'm, going to continue supporting. Now, I'm not saying we do that for these organizations, but I also want to make sure that we're taking a community-focused approach and not a corporate approach to this. And I recognize that we need to make sure that these certain organizations don't become dependent, that we're not like a source of ongoing support, but I think per project makes more sense. I want it the way other side, which is per project, but bound at every like 2 years you can reapply or whatever for the same project. But I do think that at minimum per project is fair. One of the reasons that last year we changed the eligibility to split between pre-existing organizations and new organizations was for the express reason that we wanted to make sure that we could support these new organizations. And I actually think we've done a pretty good job of supporting the new groups. But I think being able to see it like that, we decided when we did the cost breakdown of the 70 to 90, we said that we weren't going to decide like a percentage of how much I think it was this commission that decided that we weren't going to say, 50% had to be utilized for new organizations, or 50% had to be utilized for, or 70% had to be utilized for new organizations. I just think that there's a balance to be struck here, and I think we're kind of hitting that now, which is exciting. The thing that I really don't want to see is slippery slope organizations, and I think my eligibility requirement additional bullet or additional line item would be, is your service limited to a subset of the Cupertino population, or is it available to everyone within that demographic? So for example, if there was one youth organization that was, I think, robotics related, but they were available to all young people who lived in Cupertino, that made sense to me because it wasn't limiting that resource access to a select group of people. But if you do it for a high school, if somebody goes to a different school, you're limiting that. So I think making sure that it is available to all people in Cupertino within that demographic should become an eligibility requirement.
Okay,
So with some of the conversation, Carol, sorry, do you mind if I'd like to share the website that we have just to kind of clarify a couple things. So this should look a little bit familiar, but this is the website that shows all of the nonprofit support that the city gives. And if you notice, the very first one is actually the festivals. These are fee waivers that go in the budget and are approved by city council. So many of the festivals receive money that basically makes it so they don't have to rent the fields, they don't have to pay for the policing, the PW, shutting down streets. That is what this festival waiver is for. Some of these groups may also come to you through the community funding program. For the same festival, it's usually money to be spent toward other things, and that's completely up to you guys, but I just wanted to make that piece clear. And then of course we have the section that shows what you and city council have approved in the way of actual community funding. And then there's the sister city funding and just how much they get each year, because the sister cities also receive money. And then any out of cycle fee waivers, which basically means groups that went straight to city council and asked for a waiver in some way, shape, or form. So this website is updated, and then of course the Cupertino Historical Society, which you all know about. This website is updated I'm going to try to keep 3 years on it. Right now we have 1 because it's brand new. But after we obviously get the okay from city council for this year, we'll add in what this year's funding is. But I basically just wanted to let you guys see that there are other festival fee waivers in the budget also.
Okay, so this fee waiver is separate from what you were talking about. Like if you went to Quinlan as a 501, whatever nonprofit, you get a certain rate. That's different from this extra fee waiver that they get. So if they get a fee waiver, that should be in the application.
Yes.
So if that fee waiver is okay. So shouldn't that be an eligibility criteria in that if you already get a fee waiver, then, coming back for a community grant, it's it's double dipping, right?
So, I mean, that's up to you guys and what you decide, but I am going to throw out one other slight option for you guys. And basically, if you'd like to make, because I'm hearing a lot of, you guys are on the same page mostly with what you're thinking. And so I feel like if you'd like to make the eligibility somewhat simple, basically they have to be a nonprofit, they have to serve Cupertino, and I don't remember what the third one is off the top of my head right now.
Application.
And it must be a complete and submitted application on time. Then all of these other things that you really want to make sure you're thinking about could be in your rating criteria so that each of you have the ability to rate each group on how they did with your thoughts on those things, which would mean all of the groups would come to you and you would have the chance to share your feelings through your ratings. So that's just an idea to throw out there for you guys.
Well, and I just also, I'm sorry, I'm so adamant about making this point. We did not deem people ineligible. We deemed them eligibility pending. And so that was for the commission to decipher. We didn't want to make those decisions because staff and ourselves could not decide. So if we couldn't decide, we wanted the commission to make the decision. And so I think that giving a little bit more clarity for us to bring forward those groups to you that are in fact eligible will make it an easier conversation. And exactly like what Rochelle is mentioning, that the criteria that you utilize will decipher how you rank people and who you want to fund.
Okay, Commissioner Gopal.
Sure, thank you. I think maybe I came out a little differently, but my intention is the same as I think Chair, you mentioned. If city is kind of outsourcing because they couldn't and they need an extended partner to do some work, that should be an ongoing, which I think I will let city council and the city staff to decide, and which organization does that work which city is not able to do, right? Any organization could be. That I know Historical Society is one example, similarly others. That I'm not saying that we should not do it, absolutely. It's up to the city and the staff to see that, okay, I don't have a bandwidth, but somebody can do much more efficiently than me. I have money allocated, whoever wants it, take it and run it. That's fantastic, I'm not saying it. But since we include that one, if you all remember, I think last year or the year before, that's where we said the Historical Society, we keep on funding because it's a must and every time. Then they said, this doesn't make sense because you're taking away anyway 20K from your normal 80K, then it is going away, then it is deprived that benefit for others, right? So that's the reason we said that, okay, we don't want to. So that city council, city staff go on to figure it out, right? Because we don't want to do this constantly. Because not doing it also feels so bad on us, saying that, oh my God, I know they're right to doing it, but I know what, I don't want to do it. So it puts an awkward situation. So that's what I was trying to say, that if there is a city related, and if it is a city festival or city related event, which city feels that somebody has to run it, it's up to city and staff to figure it out. How much you spend, if it is 15K, 20K, 30K, it's a city and the city council's decision. When it comes to the community fund, means we are encouraging more. That's what I think, Commissioner Dama, when I said seed funding, is that I wanted to encourage more organizations to come and try to serve, right? Step up and to serve. And they will go back if they see the similar trend. If I see this trend, I know for sure I'm not going to get in. I will not even apply it. So what does that mean is that you're not even inviting. That's what my intention behind my comment is. We need to invite more and more people to come up to serve the community, and that this should be an invitation. They should see this as an opportunity that I think I can go and get it, kind of. Now, I don't think it is. It is absolutely 50% of the team will say, based on the last 2 years result, I know these are the big players will get it all the time. You know what? I may stand a chance in 1 in 5, 1 in 10, kind of. They will not. That means you are discouraging it. So that's the reason I said that city has to think about it. City staff has to think about it, Park and Rec staff. If this is associated with your day, every year, constantly running the business, deal with it separately. Work with any organization, city, council, hey, we need to do it. Or, you know what, let's keep it running. We will put it, our own staff will run it. It's up to the staff decision. That's the intention behind my comment. I just want to make it very clear.
You know, that's really helpful. I think I do see sort of a bifurcation here, is because we can see some of the organizations that are coming in for community grants have been given money every year for the last 10 years. And if that's the case, why are we making them jump through hoops? If we really want them to be doing whatever that project is that they're doing every year, why isn't that just going into a budget line that the budget is including that? And the difference with the Historical Society, I think, and why we did that one, and you can say first, but why that one stood out when we did it, is that they really were using it for operational costs. And so they didn't fit at all. And so, but they had been given money, and then the criteria came up and it was like, oh my gosh, they really don't fit into this program anymore, but we still want to fund them. And so I think, you know, if we want to make this a really seed fund, something to be encouraging different and new and creative opportunities for the city and the residents, we should separate that for the things that are tried and true and we know that we probably want to do every year, and they really shouldn't be part of this process, or they should be separate, and they should be reviewed. They absolutely shouldn't be given a pass, but they should be reviewed. Are they doing the thing that the city wants them to do? And I think that would help us really identify where the opportunities are. And maybe the fund is not $70,000 to $90,000, because some chunk of it will go to these organizations that we know we want to do every year. I think some of them, when we say, oh, they really come in for a different project every year, it's because they turn themselves in a pretzel to try to fit the criteria. And so part of that is they know the city doesn't want to just be throwing money into a big basket where it can't be identified. The city likes to identify, this is where our money went. And so West Valley may come in and say, we want a pantry, or we want this, or we wanted that. Or Deer Hollow comes in and says, we need money for this particular thing. But there are some organizations that the city has deemed worthy for value to our residents that we want to support. I mean, and that's a historical perspective. And the thing is, does it make sense? And you know, you can go down the list and see who they are. There's probably 4 or 5 of them. You know, the Audubon Society, Rotary, Deer Hollow Farm, West Valley Community Services, the UFRAP Museum. There's 5 of them right there that have been given money every year. And so why are they sucking up this particular airspace? It seems to me that the city has been very supportive and wants those things to happen and wants those amenities to be available. And maybe this isn't, you know, now that it's coming to us and we want to see new and different things, but we also don't want to crowd out those tried and true opportunities, I think. Commissioner Begor?
I think we've sort of beaten this topic to death. So I'm just thinking, should we put an eligibility criteria, or should we just say, okay, we've discussed this and, you know, Director Joanne, take it forward. You know, it's like, where do we go? I mean, clearly there are, as you just stated, very, very articulately, there are at least 5 organizations that come back every year. But then there is, if only those get granted, then everybody else is sort of locked out of this. So should we have something that says this is an organization that needs to, you know, this is a separate group?
So
do we put that as a separate group, or?
So I think our intention to bring this back so close to the process is just so that we would all have a memory of what just happened. And so I think that all of this feedback is great. And I think what, as staff, we need to do is kind of process it and kind of come up with a game plan and bring it back to you again for further vetting. So I think that that's probably the best we can do for tonight. But I understand all of the points that have been made, and we can look further into who's been funded for how much and come up with a game plan. Luckily, we don't have to bring this to council with the item on the 18th. This is a process that we'll take a few more cracks at to, you know, get as perfect as we can. But I think all of the feedback is valid, and we have good direction.
Okay, good. I think that was what I was hoping to get from Rochelle at the beginning, but now you have all our input and you can incorporate that. So I appreciate you asking us for that, and I'm glad to hear that, you know, now you can take all of that and
we just didn't want to come with preconceived notions on what we thought the process should be. We really appreciate this conversation and you guys working through it and letting us know how you feel. So sometimes we do come with recommendations because they seem obvious, but again, I think that this conversation was very enlightening.
Okay, Commissioner Gopal?
Thank you. I was about to, like when Commissioner Sashi was asking about what to do next exactly, I think Dr. Joan read my mind, which is too dangerous. But exactly what it is. So I would like the staff to go back based on our inputs, come back to us and say, yes, these are the way. So this is the way it is, because this might need city manager and city staff plus council, all of them, they need to think about it. How do we really keep this as a recurring expenses, right? Recurring funding. I call as a recurring funding for these organizations which we feel it. And the other one is, as I said, seed or other encouraging funding kind of stuff. It'll be good to have it. Otherwise, as Chair said, that yeah, 50% of them is get sucked by this one, and it's going to be very difficult. I wish if I have a $1 million we have $1 million to do the community funding every year. That's awesome. That would be a little different problem to handle. But we are constrained with 80K, 90K, 100K, and it looks so odd for fighting on that 50K. So that's all. I think that is when you got it. I was about to say it, but I just want to say that exactly that's what I would love to see it.
Okay, Commissioner Bogora, final comments?
Yeah, just one other sort of on this topic. You know, what if it turns? I mean, this is just a question, really, more than a comment. If, like, for example, this time Commissioner Gopal was excused himself from participating in this process because he was involved with the library, whatever. So what if it turns out that multiple of us are involved in multiple of these things? So can we just stay? Does the process say that you should stay out completely out of the community grant program, or does it say just stay out of voting for that particular?
So this decision is based upon how the commissioner feels about participation. There is no rule or, you know, law that says you cannot participate. It's kind of the newspaper test. If you're on a particular board and your foundation is asking for funding, it probably behooves you to eliminate yourself from the process of giving input in that whole process. So Gopal had to make a decision on whether or not he would just remove himself from rating the foundation or all the other entities that could be affected, you know, in the process. So it's more of a personal decision. And so again, I think if you're part of a group, but you don't really have any decision-making abilities with regard to finances, it's not as big of an issue, but we take it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the ethics training that we took, and there are some specific rules in there and considerations. And in this kind of a situation, I think it's difficult to rate everything else and not one particular entity, because everything is measured against everything else. So it from a practicality perspective, that didn't really work, I don't think. So that was my thought on that. Last thoughts, Commissioner Tombe.
Yeah, so there's one, oh, there's a little feedback. There's one more thing, which is one of the things I noticed kind of in our discussion when we're actually reviewing the organizations was that folks felt like one would qualify or one would not qualify for XYZ reason, but that also applied to another organization. It's like, okay, well, if you're saying that for this organization, it should apply to the other organization. And so when Assistant Director Sander was explaining, hey, what if we just really simplified the eligibility requirements to be baseline and then everything above that is either in the rating system. I liked the sound of that. I think that that's really interesting. My only concern is I do want to make sure that we are consistent. So even if I want it one way for an organization and I don't really want it one way for another organization, that shouldn't matter. If we're doing it for one organization, it should be consistent for the other organization. So if there's, I don't know how to codify that, but that's just some food for thought, is making sure that that thought process remains the same across the board, so that we're not, you know, invalidating one organization for a reason that would apply to another organization as well.
Commissioner Gopal?
Yeah, I know this will be the last one from mine. I can guarantee.
Thank you.
I think, like Commissioner Bagur said, yeah, this is the one I felt that, oh my God, I wanted to be there and I couldn't do it, and then it's bad, assuming that I couldn't do it. But absolutely, I see, and more when we become part of more and more organizations, and then this is going to come. And if it is more than 3 people got in the commission, get into one each, and they apply to it, we are stuck. So I think we may not solve it now, but I already had a detailed discussion on this with the Dr. Joanne before I do excuse myself from that process. This is a very critical decision we need to, and I think I would like to definitely look at Director Joanne to really work with the city attorney and staff to figure it out what is the best thing, because I'm sure there will be a position where 3 of the commissioners will be part of one of them, and then you don't even have a majority to make a decision on any of them. So it is going to be really in a bad situation. So I just put that as a request. I also would love to hear from what the advice. Anyway, we are not immediately doing it for the next year, but I think it will be good. I personally joined another 2 organizations recently, and I'm really worried that I will be excused all the time, which I don't want to. I want to be participating in it. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think, the ethics criteria really can guide us and give us a lot of guidance. And then my last comment is that, if we look at, there's some organizations that are doing something annually that we know we want to try to put into a different, maybe a budgeting cycle or something like that. There should be an opportunity for maybe one of these new organizations, once they've proven themselves through the community grant as seed funding, and then we say, wow, that's something that they can't do without our help, and maybe we want to make that an annual thing. There should be a way to, over time, move into, organizations should be able to move in, and if they don't live up to what they're supposed to do, also be moved out from that other process. Okay, we're done with that one. Let's move on to item number 6, Rancho Rinconada Recreation and Park District Community Outreach.
All right, I am going to share my screen to provide an update on this item. Okay, everybody see that? I hope. Okay. So we are going to just review some background, talk about the Rancho Rinconada Recreation and Park District community meetings and their survey, and the city's project website. So as you remember, the City Council unanimously carried a motion at their March 2nd special meeting study session to delay consideration of the Rancho Rinconada Recreation and Park District acquisition to allow for engagement and long-term planning for aquatics facilities in the city, and until RRRPD completes the strategic visioning and outreach process and makes a recommendation. And so, as part of their strategic visioning process, the RRRPD has hosted 2 community meetings to gather feedback from its residents. The Rancho webpage notes that the video recordings of these meetings are anticipated to be posted to view, expected to be published on May 10th, which is Monday. As requested by the commission, staff inquired about the funding for the district's outreach efforts. Rancho uses a single fund and does not segregate property tax from program revenue. And so all expenses are paid out of that commingled fund, including the strategic visioning process and all related efforts. The district issued a survey to its residents, which their website notes was concluded on April the 12th. The survey included 7 questions, which covered programs, facilities, the potential acquisition of the district by the city, and preferred topics of methods of communication. The city has recently updated the Rancho Rinconada project webpage, which can be found at cupertino.org/Rancho Rinconada. The updated page includes the background of the project, important documents, including the LAFCO Special Study Report, a timeline for the item, and a link to the website. So that's my short presentation for you tonight.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, then I'll go to public comment on this item. If there's anyone in public who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand now. I see one person raising their hand, Jennifer Griffin.
Thank you, Chair Stanek. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin, and you guys always have very interesting conversations among yourselves. Yes, I had attended all of the meetings we've had. Let me write the notes here. There have been lots of activities. I participated in the survey. There were, let's see, 2 workshops. Actually, there have been 3. I think I think there were 2 workshops, and then there have been 3 actual activities that were carried on by the consulting group. And I will tell you, in my professional experience, I was very, very impressed by how everything has been handled. The consultant has done a wonderful job. He's asked pertinent questions. I have worked at 3 different large organizations that used this type of consultation. 2 were in computer IT, etc. And I have been very, very impressed. There was a good participation. Everything was very easy to understand, lots of good questions. And I think it helped me to understand what the public's expectations are. And I'm just very, very impressed at how everything has been handled there. So I just wanted to pass that along, that as a resident of Rancho Rinconada Special District, I'm very, very pleased with the way this has been handled by the Special District and the consultant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. And I don't see any other public comments, so I'll bring it back to the commission. If you have any comments or discussion at this time, please raise your hand. Commissioner Tombe.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation and for following up with them. It's important to know what funding is being used in taxpayer dollars towards these kinds of surveys as well. So it's not just it's not from their revenue, it's from the taxpayer dollars. So that's good to know. I am just looking forward to seeing this. I really hope it's successful. Like I don't live there. I don't sports. So my whole hope with all of this was that the residents who live in the area who pay tax dollars actually use the facility, and that 10% number really goes up significantly. So I hope that their efforts are really successful, and that we are the folks who are paying taxes and get what they deserve out of the facility.
Okay, Commissioner Hsu.
And thank you for the update. I checked the Rancho Rinconada website. Yeah, they did post the video of the community outreach meeting. And if you click on that link, you can get to their YouTube channel. So under the channel, they posted the board meeting in the past. So there's a lot of information for public. But it seems we haven't got the survey result. We still need to wait, looks like. And for the city's webpage about Rancho Rinconada, and thank you for the update of the page. I just still wondering if we can put some Q&A, maybe some simple question for residents. They want to know, would there be any impact on their property tax, or would city increase the charge for the swimming pool if they acquire the swimming pool? Just like those common questions. So if our city can provide some information on the website, that may help people to understand what will happen if they merged, or yeah.
Yeah, so I really can't actually answer those questions at this point in time. We wouldn't know the answers to those until we either proceeded or not. So it's hard to say if we would change programming or because we haven't gone through the process. It would really be an analysis of the site and what costs would be associated with it, the staffing, when it would be open. And so we haven't gone through that analysis. So it would be very hard to preemptively put that information in an FAQ.
Okay, but as for, I think someone asked about their tax. I think
so. Their taxes wouldn't change. Their taxes won't change, but it could possibly change the amount of tax that the city receives. So that again is a pending item that we couldn't, possibly, decipher at this moment.
Okay. Are there any other comments on this item? Okay, let's move on to item number, we have a new area of our agenda for new business. And this item was brought to us by some community members, and it is the use of public tennis courts and the regulation of that use.
So our assistant director is back, Rochelle Sander, to provide you just a brief PowerPoint presentation about the tennis courts, the public tennis courts, and how they're reserved.
Yeah, so we looked into some other cities just to give you guys some idea for your conversation. So, okay. So staff contacted 11 cities in the area and received responses from 7 of those cities about their public tennis court process. All the responding cities shared that they have seen an increase in court usage during the pandemic, but most cities feel that as the guidelines continue to ease, the public tennis courts will go back to being a little less impacted. 5 of the cities consider the public courts a self-monitored area of play, and any issues that may come up are to be directed to the sheriff's non-emergency number. Mountain View's Cuesta Park tennis courts have part-time staff on site that do monitor those courts. Santa Clara has an outside contractor that monitors play, classes, and instruction on their courts. Most cities have rules posted, but no other mechanism for court management. 2 cities have timing clocks, with one having a racket order system also with the timing clocks. And Menlo Park actually has quite the system. They have a paid system that includes a yearly fee and a fee per reservation. Memorial, Varian, and Monte Vista at this time all have racket court orders and timing systems to help regulate the first come, first served public courts. So our recommended action tonight is to discuss the use of the public tennis courts and the regulation of that use.
Thank you for the presentation. So what I'd like to do is open it up for questions, and we do have a couple of attendees who I think would like to make some comments. So let's just keep the first part to questions right now before we go into comment. Commissioner Kumarapan.
Sure, thank you. Chair, so Rachel, is it a couple of questions? Number one, they have this clock system or they have the racket system kind of. Do we have a similar one here in ours?
So the last picture of the 2 systems, those are at all 3 of our public courts in Cupertino. Memorial Park, Varian Park, and Monte Vista Park. Okay.
And the second question I had was, since a lot of, I think, written communication, I've seen a lot of things from our citizens here and our community members that there is a challenge here, right? Did you get a similar information from the other cities? They do have a similar complaints or anything, especially not the ones with the managed. I think Santa Clara and Mountain View looks like somebody is supervising it, seeing it, but looks like the others are not. Did you get any information on, do they get a lot of these complaints? And if so, how do they handle it?
Yes, so every city that responded that wasn't those 2 is seeing the same increase in complaints due to the pandemic. We do have to remember that tennis is one of the few things that people could go out and do for a lot of the pandemic. And so most cities just ask people to call the non-emergency sheriff's number. There's not something set in place in those cities for staff to deal with what's going on.
Okay, thank you. I do have something to discuss, but I'll wait for the turn. So, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from commissioners? I have a question. Would it be possible to do a reservation system such as we have for the tennis courts at the sports center? Would it be possible to incorporate that?
That's a little bit of a hard question for me to answer right now due to the fact that the registration system at the sports center has so much to do with the fact that it's a membership-based place and you have to reserve a court. There's a whole other set of logistics for a public set of courts, not to mention there's staff at the sports center able to actually make sure the right people are on the right courts, and if there's an issue, help deal with it. There's not a level of staffing that could be out at the public courts. So even if you have a piece of paper or your phone or something else saying that you've rented it, that's not necessarily going to deter from some of the issues that are currently happening. So I can't say no right this second because I would have to do a lot of research in our system, but it would definitely take a whole different set of logistics to make it happen.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I'll go and take public comment. And I see two people. The first one to be recognized is Santosh.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for bringing this item to the agenda. I appreciate the engagement and the interest with the community. Some of you know me as well. I'm an active, engaged member in the community, play tennis 3 or 4 days a week, and on public courts, perhaps multiple days a week, in addition to being at CSC. What I'd like to share is that by using any kind of a free online reservation, what you would be offering the community is the ease of booking courts for a slot and showing up when it's their turn. And it is a self-policed system or an honor system, but at least they have the ability to pull out a phone and show the reservation, or perhaps pull up a paper or something that lets them show their reservation. And while it is still self-enforced, at least it's better than what we have right now. As some of you have seen on the Nextdoor thread, it is highly challenging right now when members question the start time and the people on court can flat out deny the start time they started at. The other issue with the clocks that you just showed is several of them are actually non-operable. I don't know if you just took the photographs or you actually tried to operate those devices. Some of them do not actually move. I've played at the courts that you're showing photographs at, and those clocks do not move. In many cases, due to COVID concerns, people do not want to touch them. And so for a variety of factors, there are issues. I understand some of this is COVID related, but having played on the city courts and in Santa Clara County for, 25 years now, what I would say is that courts have always been a challenge and they are ripe for modernization. And what I will also offer up is that the Valley Church courts actually use an online website for free reservations, which is an example you can take a look at. The Valley Church courts are located, as you know, at Stelling and Homestead, and they do have a website-based reservation. It's a free system, but it's an honest system and it works very well. Most people that play on the courts are regulars and are just looking to get their tennis time in as efficiently as they can. And I'm sure the community would appreciate a system that lets them come in when the reservation says it's their time and not have to wait for 30 minutes or 1 hour. So I request you to take a look at the engagement from the community, the request, the website facility that you have today that hopefully can be extended, or to look at the Valley Church facility, which has a different website that they use, and also to not take necessarily any cues from the other cities and whether there were similar complaints, because it is perhaps a reflection of the engagement of the community with you all and a reflection of your willingness to engage with the community that may not be reflected in the other cities. So thank you for considering the item and the feedback as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next resident to comment is Leanna Crabtree. Welcome, Leanna. Oh, there. Are you there?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, can now. I think I didn't unmute you properly.
Thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. I agree with all of the comments that Santosh has given, and I really appreciate the commission considering this item. You know, looking at those clock dials, it takes me back many years, 40 years at least, from when I played tennis growing up in Fremont, and we had a very similar technology to track you know, reservation or walk-in opportunities at tennis courts. And I feel like we have had so many ways that technology has actually improved that we do have the tools available to do some kind of online reservation system. So people aren't going and just kind of fingers crossed hoping that there'll be a court for them, but actually be able to reserve a time. And I agree also that, of course, there's no assurance that someone would leave, but if you, you know, present in a respectful manner that you had reserved the court, maybe there's another court where the folks who wanted to continue playing could actually just move and you could come and have your court time. I also would just like to comment on the equity issue that, you know, the tennis courts are really concentrated on the west side of town. And I hope that this is a little bit off topic, but maybe there's some consideration of really partnering with our high schools to open up some tennis courts at the high school for public use, some kind of city school district partnership so that there are tennis courts that are closer to home for people who are living on the east side. So with that, just in closing, I would like to say, please, thank you for bringing this item to the commission and for consideration. And I hope that you will consider an online reservation system for at least some of the courts that are available for public use. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it back to the commission. Before we go to comments, I just want to chime in that I actually visited Monte Vista, the courts at Monte Vista today, Berry and Memorial Park, and I can see what they're talking about with the time dials, that some of them are not working. Some of them just flop to the bottom and you can't really use them. So, and the other thing was there were people playing and they just, there were open courts, but they just didn't bother to use them. And so that's an issue where if they're there, then when new people come, you really don't know when they actually started. So I understand the concern for that. So I'll go ahead and bring it back to the commission for other comments. Commissioner Gopal.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I go with, I had the same experience like Santosh and Liana too, many times on it. When I went with my son, it's the same problem. You can wait there for 30 minutes. Still, they will say, I just started, or just I started with one partner, then one partner changes, the other partner comes. So that means I'm a new kind of a game starting on it. So it's always, sometimes it's to some extent you can wait, after that you get really frustrated and walk out, right? And it's, I'm not saying that everyone does it, but it happens most of the time. And I really, really support to have an online reservation system, which really puts it. And if there is an example, I think already Valley Church or an already one, we should use that as an example to see it and put it there. It puts some self-discipline to us, all of us. And also, I'm sure that people will do the honor system. And if we really publish it too and say, going forward, all the public courts in Cupertino will be on a self-registration and reservation system, and you publish it through the city, they know that it is official. It's not that somebody just come on but show up in a mobile, that this is important. And many times I've seen not just adults, but even they brought kids and they were waiting on that and sitting on the side on especially Memorial Park. I've seen it many times, and they just walked back and the kids were really screaming that I couldn't do it kind of. And those are the things I think we need to help. and absolutely I support, and definitely we need to invest. And any help staff needs to work with on it, and you form, okay, there is a subcommittee or somebody here to go and do research and come back and do it. Absolutely, I'm willing to help from my side too. So absolutely, I support the citizens' asks.
Okay, Commissioner Begor.
The same lines. I don't know how complicated it would be, or given all the things that our IT department has to do, but putting up this little link, and I just checked out the Valley Church link. It seems to be a pretty simple form that we can put in, and just as Commissioner Kumarpan just referred, if we can issue this as a something that's coming from the city, then people would be forced to. You could also, threaten to say you'll get a citing of some kind, whether somebody follows up or not is a different story. But the fact that there would potentially be consequences for behavior like this might stop. I mean, I think we all have to learn to share. In kindergarten, we were taught to do that, but life happens. People don't. So we need to implement something a little bit different, I think, than other cities, and actually get this going and make it life easier for everybody using the courts.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Tambe.
So we all know I don't sports. So I had the same initial reaction, which was, well, it's not necessarily going to solve the problem because there's no way to enforce it. But if the people who play there are telling us that this is something that's going to help them, then I err on the side of, this is what our community is asking for. We should give it to them. And if that's going to, if anything, we tried, right? So this is the effort saying like, hey, yes, we're looking at this as a system. The only thing I just want to make note of is, and one thing we've really learned from COVID is that not everybody has the same access to technology, especially our seniors. And so I don't know, again, I don't play tennis, so I don't know what the population is of the people who use the public courts. I've seen mostly like younger-ish people, not like super senior non-tech savvy folks. But I do just want to make sure that, if we can partner with the senior center or make some kind of like dedicated time for seniors to have access to register, or some kind of support for folks who aren't necessarily as tech savvy, just to get that access time, that would be great. Because I would hate for it to turn into like a vaccine situation where somebody's like trying to get a vaccine, but they can't because they can't work the website. So as long as there's some kind of accommodation made for our seniors, we are supposed to be, a senior friendly community. As long as that's somehow included into the mix, then I think that this makes a lot of sense, and looking forward to seeing how it would help the various courts.
Okay, thank you. I agree 100%. I think what having a reservation identifier on your phone would do, it would eliminate the I said, you said kind of a situation. So it could potentially reduce conflict, because I don't think people want to be the one to call code enforcement. That's not a comfortable situation. And if it's just I said they've been here for this long, or I can't get on the court, there's nothing code enforcement can really do with that. That's a very difficult thing for code enforcement to figure out. So something that is a reservation that you can print out or identify on your phone, I think that helps alleviate that uncertainty. And so I think that makes sense. I also agree, and I think Anna Crabtree brought this up in her letter, the sensitivity to those who do not have the technology for this, to make sure that they have an ability to get those reservations as well. And it may be a printout or whatever it is, to have some support for that. And so I really appreciate that comment. I like the comment about partnering with the high schools as well. That the high schools, I think they all have tennis courts, and to the extent that we could partner with them to make more available, that would be good. For tennis, it may be more of a young person's sport because it's very hard on your knees, but the more we get into pickleball, this may be another opportunity for this conflict or more people interested. And the more we can easily allocate the scarce resource in a fair way, that would, I think that would be a good idea. So I really encourage us to explore how we could do this in a simple way. I also wanted to comment, as I was out there at these parks today, I noticed that there are signs that say what the rules are, you know, singles an hour, doubles an hour and a half. Some of them are an hour and a quarter, whatever. And then there's plaques that have the same information, but the information is different. And so for singles, it would say an hour and a half, whereas the sign would say an hour. So I thought that was that was an opportunity for confusion. And I would encourage us to go out and review those signs and the plaques to make those consistent so that we have, we can just eliminate any confusion in working with those things. Also, I have been watching, since this came up to us, I took note on Nextdoor, there is a very serious issue in Saratoga with people using courts. And what you find is that they're finding people coming in outside of the city to use their courts and just monopolizing them. And so we really do want to make sure that our courts are available for our residents, and a reservation system that, you know, maybe gives some priority. You know, residents can make their reservations a little bit longer in advance or whatever, and then others. That could also make it a priority for our residents, which I think our residents would appreciate. Are there any other comments? Okay, then we will move on to item number 8, staff and commission reports.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. That would help.
Oh, that.
Okay, so hopefully everybody can see this. All right,
Yes.
Great, perfect. So the county continues to offer the free COVID testing at the Cupertino Senior Center with appointments upcoming on May 19th from 9:30 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. Just a reminder that even if you've been vaccinated, getting tested is still important for the community's general health. For more information, it would be available on the Santa Clara County website at sccfreetest.org. Currently, all individuals age 16 and older who live or work or attend school in Santa Clara County are eligible to be vaccinated. And for more information, it is available on the Santa Clara County website at sccfreevax.org. So, Santa Clara County is still currently aligning with California's blueprint for a safer economy and is still under the orange tier. So significant changes since the previous update include gatherings are no longer limited to 3 households. So outdoor gatherings can now have a maximum of 50 people, and indoor gatherings are still strongly discouraged, but limited to 25% of maximum capacity or 25 people, whichever is fewer. The restrictions have not changed for youth sports groups, museums, indoor and outdoor activities, playgrounds, or picnic areas. And then here, just again to show you all the participation numbers, again at the tennis courts at the sports center, the golf course, again, super popular, continuing to be popular. And then our virtual classes and fee-based virtual classes, again, continue to track along, as well as our lifetime classes, camps, and private lessons. So several items were taken to the City Council for review and approval on May 4th, including acceptance of grant funds from the state of California for a full-size outdoor basketball court, the field use policy, the long-awaited field use policy, and fee schedule updates. So the field use policy was updated with the following amendments. So the recommended fees will be phased over 2 years. So for fiscal year 21-22, The revised fees are shown. So we had initially said it would be $10, $30, $50, and $60. And so council adopted a half rate for a slower integrated implementation. So it's $5, $15, $25, and $30. And then for fiscal year 22-23, it will be at the full amount that you all reviewed at the special meeting. So as far as the additional 2 Sundays allocated per group, it was expanded from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Park sites can be reserved on Sundays. Park sites can only be reserved on Sundays up to 10 times per year. And council would like a status update on the revised policy in 1 year to see how it's tracking. So for the fee schedule updates, the revised community garden fees were approved and went into effect yesterday, starting May 5th. So those fees are shown here. The rest of the updates, including the revised field use fees, go into effect starting July 1st. So there were some fees associated with senior center, sports center, field use, outdoor facilities, and Blackberry Farm Golf Course in the new fee schedule. Renovations of the restrooms near the playground next to Anton Way in Memorial Park have been completed. Here are a few pictures of the renovations, which include new plumbing, painted walls, and new partitions, which bathrooms are super exciting to look at. The restrooms at Jollyman Park are estimated to be closed until Monday, May 10th for plumbing work. Porta potties and hand washing stations are available for the public during the closure. Just wanted to show you a picture at the McClellan Ranch. The community garden sign was upgraded, as seen here. And then here are some pictures of the newly built beds and the shade structure. And the garden is currently anticipated to open in the coming week or so. We're just fine-tuning a few last things that have taken longer than expected. And we're hoping for a ribbon cutting sometime in the end of June or early July. So it keeps getting pushed along a little bit. So apologies on that. The virtual Big Bunny 5K occurred April 3rd to April 11th. Over 200 people registered to participate in the event this year. Included are pictures of the bunny during the packet pickup. And then we have a couple here for some of the participants, people wearing their fancy shirts and their ears. So Blackberry Farm swimming pools will open for the season on June 15th. Reservations will be required for a 1.75 hour swim block and can be made 2 weeks in advance. To make reservations, please visit blackberryfarm.org. Due to the COVID-19 guidelines, the slide will not be open this season. The pool will be open Tuesday through Friday from noon to 6 and Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The city will be hosting virtual community meetings on the next 3 Thursdays, actually, May 13th, 20th, and 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. to discuss the Juniper Serra Trail. More information can be found on the city's project webpage at cupertino.org/JST. And then here we just like to continue to provide links for the public on our budget, CIP, and city work program dashboards. Our upcoming mayor's meetings is scheduled for May 12th with Commissioner Tombe scheduled to attend. And the following meeting will be on June 9th with Vice Chair Hsu scheduled to attend. And staff will coordinate with the city manager's office and have them provide commissioners with the Zoom link closer to the meeting date. And that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on the director's report? Commissioner Tombe.
I was wondering, and I don't know if this exists, but I was wondering if there is, I know that San Francisco's done it, but do we have a count of what percentage of people in Cupertino over the age of 16 have been vaccinated?
You know, I think they gave that update at the Monday COVID meeting that I was unable to attend. So I can get that information for the next meeting.
Yeah, that would be great just to know.
Yeah,
and then
Commissioner Tombe, I saw there is a map online by zip code. And
do you know what software it's through?
Do I know what?
Do you know where I can see that?
No, but what I just saw it, I don't know where I saw it. If I find it, I'll let you know. I was disappointed. It was color coded on a map, and Cupertino was a lot lighter. Darker meant more vaccinations. Cupertino was about 30%, in the 30% range.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very disappointed to see the rates because we were lower than some of our surrounding cities.
Okay.
I will say the county does have a lot of that information by zip code on it. So I don't know if you can go to the county website, the COVID county website. They usually have all the statistics on there, but I'll try and find it and actually let you know.
Yeah, that would be great, especially with the new kind of crazy strains. People, yeah, well, we don't get too into detail with that, but I think it's really important. And if we need to, make sure that we send out messaging through our recreation services of resources, which I know we're doing, but maybe if there's something new we need to do or something different to encourage that, I just want to make sure that we're doing our part on that front. And then the second question, I actually love bathrooms. I think having great bathrooms is fantastic. I was just wondering if they had, especially the ones that are at Jollyman Park, because we're going to be putting the all-inclusive playground there. I just wanted to make sure that there were either like family bathrooms or gender neutral bathrooms, so we're not, creating more conflict for people. So kind of making it more open. So I just want, and diaper changing stations, because all abilities, folks. So I just, I want to make sure moms get in there and they have the ability to change their kids' diapers, or dads get in there and they have the ability to change their kids' diapers. So.
Yeah, no, actually, we removed the partitions because they really were not necessary, because they were single stall restrooms, and we made them more gender inclusive. And so we eliminated male and female, and we are installing a diaper changing station in one of them. And we're looking at an adult changing station for the other, but there needs to be some reinforcement and spacing issues. So we don't know if we'll be able to do that upgrade, but if we can't, we'll be putting a diaper changing station in the other one as well.
Music to my ears. Thank you. That is so fantastic. And I'm glad we have such a forward thinking and inclusive city. So thank you so much.
Yep. Are there any other questions on the director's report? Are there any other commissioner reports? If not, I'll give my report. I attended the mayor's meeting last month. I'll just give you the highlights quickly. The Fine Arts Commission, they are planning, or maybe they've already done, a small unveiling of their Art in Unexpected Places in Blackberry Farm. They're working on their Distinguished Artists. The planning is underway, and they break that out with emerging artists and distinguished artists. One of the new things is that they are going to include performing arts going forward. Yes, isn't that great? The Bike Ped Commission is looking at the building code rules, hoping to increase the bicycle accessibility there. The Sustainability Commission has been working on something called the Cupertino Youth Climate Action Team, which is across high school and De Anza College, where they're looking at climate action with students, which sounds very exciting. A couple of the commissions have specific CREST awards that are in their area of their commission. So they get to provide their input and recommendation. You may or may not know that the CREST award deadlines were extended because there were not all that many applicants. And so the city decided to extend that deadline. And I believe, unlike in previous years where the commission chairs would be reviewing this, I believe the next mayor's meeting, Commissioner Tombe, the mayor will be reviewing it at the mayor's meeting. That was what he told us at the last meeting. So you should be able, I think you'll be seeing the CREST awards there, unless he changes his mind. Under public safety, they're looking at doing some education for catalytic converter, burglaries, and just so people understand that this happens here. emergency preparedness, and they're working on smart city initiatives. I also went out and I did a couple of visits out at the Jollyman for the DOLA. And one day when I went there, I was delighted to see that Little League is in full force out there. They have practices on Tuesdays and Fridays. I was able to talk to the coach and get some feedback from him. There was a lot of activity going on at Jollyman with the volleyball, soccer, and the baseball at the same time as the DOLA. So hopefully we'll be getting good feedback on the integration of these things moving forward. Other than that, that's all I have. Are there any other comments? Commission reports. Oh, okay. Our next item. We already talked about commissioner attendance at upcoming meetings, with the mayor's meeting with Commissioner Tombe and I think Commissioner Shu the month after. For our next future agenda setting. So for our meeting in June, do we have some proposed or expected topics?
Sure do. Some exciting ones. We'll talk about the DOLA. And we will also most likely, hopefully, have enough information in time, maybe, to bring you the city work program, what has been adopted by council. Hopefully, if the timing is right and we can get it on our agenda, we will certainly bring that information to you, as well as the Blackberry Farm Golf Course study session for you to consider a recommendation for us to bring to council. So those are the items that we're definitely tracking, and you never know what else comes up.
Okay, and we can probably discuss this at the next meeting, but in many previous years, July 4th is a big staff, a lot of staff requirement around the city, and often the commission meeting the first week in July has been canceled. So that's something we might want to keep in mind.
There is an agenda item for future cancellations, which I know Commissioner Tombe will thumbs down.
Okay, are there any other items for future agenda setting? That's the last item on our agenda. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 9:37. Thank you all for attending, and thank you to our public for your public comments tonight. That was very helpful and useful.
Awesome.
Hey, Nisha, I have numbers for you. Hold on one second.